So we've had an opportunity to look at what Black History Month looks like, especially when we look at the past and celebrations of the past. But it's also about looking forward, and especially these next 4 years. And it'll be really interesting, Lucy, to get an insight into the Fit for the Future strategy, and specifically around how the FA will also be supporting Black and Asian coaches moving forwards.
Yeah, thanks, Butch. I think so for those who don't know, Fit for the Future is the name of the strategy for education for the next 4 years till 2024. And it seeks to achieve a number of things, which is to make sure that in our education and support of coaches in particular, that we are providing them with that support in a way that they need at a time that they want, essentially. And a big part of that is harnessing our digital capability and saying, and we've learned a lot of this through COVID experience, which is actually people's learning habits are changing. We want to reach people in their homes when they need the support. We want to be able to give them the stuff, whether they are, an A licensed coach and for whom football and coaching is a career, down to the person who is a dad helping out on a wet Wednesdays, got a full-time job and thinking, what on earth am I going to do now? And we give them the stuff that they need, sort of almost ready cooked. So it's looking at shifting our way of thinking about how we support coaches, whilst also recognising the absolute importance and value of one-to-one support, on the grass, standing alongside a person, supporting them in their delivery. So that's absolutely sits at the heart of what we want to do. But the effort, however big it is, we can't be everywhere all the time. And I think we've got to recognise that digital does give us a way of reaching more people. But the other part of Fit for the Future is I think, around looking at, is our workforce, and by that I mean our coaching workforce, the workforce who are out there supporting the game, leading, helping players. Is that workforce fit for the future? And what do I mean by that is it a workforce that embraces the whole of our modern English society? And if not, how can we make sure that football, which is a game for all, which is one of the easiest games to play, it's a world language, how do we get to a point where the people who are enabling that are taken from every walk of our society? And it's a big ambition. And as you alluded to previously, Butch, is that there are a number of stubborn inequalities within sport, not limited for football, which is around those from lower social economic groups, females, and those from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background. That is a fact. And I think when we've been looking at it, it's been clear that if we're going to move the dial on any of those things, we've got to set ourselves up in a different way. And therefore, we have created in our grassroots workforce very specific focuses for our coach developers on developing females, enabling them to get into the game and supporting them in that coaching, and also around the diversity inclusion, which Steve is leading. And for me, if there's one thing that we're going to do, it is to move that dial. So we have to commit to setting ourselves up differently. I keep going back to, and I guess it sort of depends a little bit on the Raheem Sterling and how you interpret that. And I've talked about this before, but one of the books I read when I was a kid was called Twilight Barking. And in this book, it's about dogs. I'm a big dog lover. They all the dogs look to Sirius the dog star. And when they're looking at Sirius the dog star, Sirius appears in their form. So if I'm an Alsatian as a dog looking at Sirius the dog star, Sirius is an Alsatian. If I'm my dog, Frankie, a Springer-Doodle, a wonderful dog, he would see Sirius as a Springer-Doodle. For me, the FA football needs to be like that when people are looking at football, they see it in their image. And therefore, we need the coaches, the support staff, the medics to be taken from, to be truly diverse so that everybody recognises football is a game for them. So for me, Fit for the Future is diversifying our workforce from grassroots all the way up to the professional game. It is not a small aim. but it's a very much at the heart of what we're doing. And it's whether you're looking at somebody getting into coaching at a playmaker level, or whether it's someone who's trying to get onto the A license or get their pro license, we've got a job to do to make sure that those who have been at a disadvantage for whatever reason, and it can be financial, it can be gender, it can be based on ethnicity, rightly or wrongly, and obviously that's wrong. We have to say, so how are we going to change our future? And we have to change the way we act, change the way we're set up to trigger that change. So I could go on about it for hours, but for me, if we want to see football really reaching every part of our society and being part of a healthier society, a society which builds communities, builds self-esteem, that can, where people can find a way of finding a place for themselves. We can be part of that. That there's no better thing that the FA can do.
Lucy, thanks for that. Steve, it's brave, it's bold, it's courageous. And you're leading from the front from a grassroots perspective as well. Exciting. 8 new coach D&I officers, and as well as a restructure that hopefully is going to move the dial.
Yeah, Butch, exciting is the word I would use. Butch, it's exciting, inspiration, and it's also it's that nervous energy about the changes that we're now bringing and consolidating. I'm going to say 2 things, Butch. I'm going to talk about. I want to just thank the people that have gone before us and the people that have brought this about through their constant challenging and questioning, because that brings us to look and reflect into ourselves and in society and football. Are we doing enough? And then we come to this brilliant future state in the next 4 years where we will be doing enough, and we will be actually really now making a huge difference to people personally. Our future state is brilliant for 2 reasons from my perspective. It offers us an opportunity to engage digitally and to reach through a way that perhaps we haven't really reached before, where it's okay to jump on, it's okay to tap in and tap out. We can offer all sorts of different digital touch points, whether they be live, recorded, and we can review. It also gives people accessibility, where there are times when some people, through different restrictions and different ideas, different living arrangements, perhaps couldn't come to a central point, as an example. That's one thing that I think is brilliant. The other bit that I'm truly excited about is we've now got 8 D&I officers who are going to work alongside 8 women and girl officers, and also some fantastic people who are going to be looking after PE. So we're going to have a collaborative approach. But in the D&I workspace, we've got people that are now dedicated in a full-time role to go and look after, support, develop, engage, inspire Black and Asian coaches. How they're going to do that, Butch, is through actually being part of the communities, because we're actually regionally based. They're actually being part of those communities, and they're being a real part in the connection and the activation of their current status as a coach, or they're going to actually connect and join people into the coaching role through Playmaker, through our new level 1 and our offers through a coaching pathway. They're also going to support people from that cultural perspective of the lens of understanding, Butch, that lens of I understand and I'm here to help you work around any stubborn inequalities, any barriers, or any, Butch, insecurities people have that they perhaps don't feel that they see enough of people from their background. I think it's also really important, Butch, to recognise that we're all on this journey together. So we're all going to be learning together and having some experiences, and we're going to use our digital platforms to also create communities of practice, and to also make sure people are talking to us and both formally and informally about how we can help in this area, how we do things differently in that area. And it's really important, Butch, I talk about how we want to inspire particularly the next generation of female Black and Asian coaches. It's so important that we support the game in a balanced way that, again, takes everybody with us. We recognise there'll be low social economic groups that we need to support. We recognise there'll be female groups that we support. We recognise there'll be Black and Asian coaches, disabled coaches, and we're going to do this with enthusiasm and with integrity. It is a great time. It is a great time to look forward, but also a nod to what's gone before, to our pioneers and our brothers and sisters in society and the game.
Thanks, Steve. One for you, Lucy. What do you think your commentary or your report would look like in 4 years from now?
That's a good question. I think, Butch, it would be brave enough to recognise that there is no single solution, that what we've done is we have worked regionally, as Steve said, locally, to find out what works for that locality. And that might be the only place that we work in that way. Whereas you go somewhere else, we've got a different way of engaging with communities and supporting coaches. So what would it look like, I think, in 4 years' time is we've really come to understand and connected with communities. And we have worked with those communities to find the solution, to find what's going to work here. And we're piloting them, and we've got the success measures, and that people are feeling, as I said a moment ago, that the FA is not potentially what they thought it was, that actually it does listen, and it does reflect, and it does engage, and it collaborates. And I think that's one of the, it's a whether it's a misconception or whatever, but I think that what I'd like to talk about is a much more integrated, joined up sense of purpose that unites football, that genuinely unites football. And we won't have cracked it, Butch, in 4 years' time. Change it like this is going to take, as Steve said, creativity. There's going to be a lot of bravery. There's going to be failure. You know, we're going to try stuff. It's not going to work. And what I would want to reflect on is, and that's okay, that actually we tried this, and with that community, it didn't work. And so we binned it off and we tried something else, because we want to be a constantly learning group of people, group of professionals, organisation, whatever it is. So, and I think we would also in that report show how we are working really closely with Sport England. So we're not just looking at it through a football bubble, because I think that we can work with partners in a really different way. I don't think it's just on the FA. I think it's about us forming new relations, different relationships, kind of relationships that are agile, that just helps us all achieve some common goals. And I know that in this space, Sport England are and have been, hugely supportive. So a report that says the dial is changing. I think I would want to see, Butch, some changes at the top end of the game. I'd want to see some changes in the women's game around the diversity agenda, and making sure that we are clear on what that looks like, that we're getting female coaches and female coaches of a Black or Asian heritage into the coaching programs and getting them supported. Equally in the men's game, that we have the talent pool and they've had the opportunity that you've articulated so many times to get the experience and to make themselves ready for the next role. As well as just growing the numbers and the profile of our grassroots. So that, for me, would be, we won't be there yet, but we will have palpable change. We'll have a different approach, and that people will say, you know what, the FA is working really hard to help us in this space. And for that, we're grateful.
That is absolutely fantastic. What I've taken from that is an FA that listens, reflects, engages and collaborates, and more importantly, an FA that's going to show up. Absolutely. And to be fair in that, I think the FA has and does show up. We're just trying to say it needs to show up in more places and in a different way. The way we've been set up is to show up in a certain way and do certain things. And what we're saying is, if I take the true meaning of diversity, we're going to diversify the way that we operate, so that we can show up in more places that works for that environment. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Steve, just following on from Lucy's comments, your context when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, but just again, it's just so inspiring. I've tried I've tried to simplify what diversity inclusion is to me, Butch, and I'll give you how it helps me get clarity. I think the diversity is the who and maybe the what, and the inclusion is I always picture it leaning towards the D. So it's how do I lean towards and support Lucy as a person, recognizing that Lucy is diverse, and how do I lean towards Butch as a person and recognizing that Butch is diverse. We could also talk about, really importantly, that everybody's diverse. And so how do we lean towards and how do we support people in a way that makes them feel really, really important? There's a huge opportunity here for people who are practicing D&I in a way that really brings it to life, is to just listen to understand rather than listen to reply. The D can mean so many things. We must lean towards our disabled colleagues, brothers and sisters. And there's the intersectionality piece, Butch, around that sits within all communities. How do we support, listen, and how do we truly bring our language and our support to life for the disabled community, and we must recognise that that's really important. Working and supporting with disabled coaches is hugely important, and sometimes we need to be the I, leaning towards, will be uncomfortable. And we do need to learn and be courageous and contextually ask questions, maybe at the right time, or, Butch, as I know that you have done on many occasions, go away and perhaps learn more. Allyship is hugely important. Get allies, get mentors that can help you understand things like diversity, the LGBT community. How do we understand better, so our language, our actions, and even the images we portray through our presentations and through ourselves, how does that be more inclusive? Think about, how do we lean towards that person? And the best way to do that is to be courageous and to be honest. What you don't understand, that's okay in diversity inclusion. That's okay. What we do understand, lean towards and really truly engage. Many communities that we really want to help, and the best way to do that is through listening, learning, and asking appropriate questions at the appropriate time.